Rain poured over the bridge that night. Cold, relentless, almost angry, and there she was, an African doctor standing at the edge, her shoes half soaked, her tears lost in the storm. She'd saved hundreds of lives, but she couldn't save her own. Her world had fallen apart, her clinic destroyed, her reputation ruined, her heart empty. One more step and it would all be over. But fate had other plans, because at that exact moment a black Maserati stopped in the middle of the bridge. The door opened, and out stepped him, the ruthless Italian Mafia boss, the man everyone feared, the man no one crossed. He didn't come to save anyone, but that night he did, and what happened after that shocked everyone. So stay till the end, because this isn't just a story about crime and power. It's about redemption, love, and the kind of twist that will leave you speechless. Don't forget to hit subscribe, drop a like, and share your thoughts in the comments, because this story will stay with you long after it ends. Rain hammered the bridge that night, washing away the city's noise and colour until everything looked grey, even her tears. Dr. Amira stood there, trembling, barefoot on cold steel, staring at the dark river below. Her white coat was soaked, her ID card swinging wildly in the wind. One last step, she told herself. One more breath, and it would all be over. She closed her eyes. A car screeched to a stop behind her. Black, tinted, expensive. Its headlights sliced through the rain like knives. A deep voice shouted, "Get off that rail!" She ignored it. Suddenly, footsteps. Fast, heavy. Then a hand grabbed her wrist, hard. "Let me go!" she screamed, trying to pull away, but his grip tightened. "Not tonight," he said coldly. She turned, ready to fight, and froze. The man holding her looked like he belonged in another world. Sharp suit, black gloves, eyes that had seen too much. His face was half hidden under the shadow of his umbrella, but even in the rain there was something terrifying about his calmness. "Who are you?" she gasped. "The man who just saved your life," he replied. "Then you've made a mistake." He studied her for a moment, then tilted his head. "People don't stand on bridges in the rain for sightseeing." She looked away. "You wouldn't understand. Try me." When she stayed silent, he sighed, dropped his umbrella and said, "Fine. If you're that eager to die, at least don't do it in my city." That tone, cold, commanding, cut through her like lightning. "Your city?" she whispered. He gave a dark smile. "Yes, Naples belongs to me." He turned to leave, but something about her, the trembling hands, the exhaustion, made him stop. Against every instinct, he turned back and threw her a folded handkerchief. "Wipe your face," he said. "You look like you've already lost the fight." "I have," she said. He looked at her one more time, and for a moment something flickered in his eyes. Then, to the men waiting by the car, he said, "Bring her." "Sir," one of them asked, "you heard me." Before Amira could protest, they wrapped a coat around her and guided her toward the car. She didn't resist, maybe because she was too cold, maybe because a part of her didn't want to be alone anymore. Inside the car, silence ruled. The man sat beside her, staring out the window. After a while, she whispered, "Why are you doing this?" He didn't answer. "You don't even know me," he finally said. "Maybe I don't have to. Maybe I just hate seeing wasted potential." She frowned. "I told you, my life is over." He turned toward her, voice low. "Then start another one." The car drove through narrow streets until they stopped in front of an iron gate. Beyond it stood a mansion, enormous, intimidating, guarded by men with guns. Amira's voice trembled. Where are we?" He opened the door. "Home." She stared at him. "Your home?" He nodded once. "And until I decide otherwise, yours too." They led her inside. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, the faint smell of cigars and rain. Everything screamed power and danger. She whispered, "Who are you, really?" He poured himself a glass of whiskey before answering. "Vincenzo Moretti." The name hit her like thunder. She had heard it before, in whispers, in headlines, in hospital gossip. The Moretti family ruled the underworld of southern Italy. Ruthless, untouchable. "You're a mafia boss," she stammered. He took a sip and said, "I prefer businessman. I shouldn't be here." "Too late," he said, walking closer. "You're already here." She stepped back, heart racing. "You think you can fix me? You can't." He smiled faintly. "Who said I want to?" He handed her a towel and gestured toward the guest room. "Clean up. Eat something. Sleep. Tomorrow, you can go back to trying to destroy yourself, if you still want to." Amira didn't know why, but something in his voice made her pause. Maybe it was the authority. Maybe it was the emptiness in his tone, like he knew exactly what dying inside felt like. She nodded weakly and followed one of the guards upstairs. When she woke the next morning, sunlight poured through silk curtains. For a moment she thought it was all a dream. But then she saw the room, too big, too perfect, too quiet, and the faint sound of a piano playing downstairs. She walked toward it. Vincenzo sat at the piano, alone, playing a slow, haunting melody. The sound didn't match his appearance. This wasn't the tune of a monster. He stopped when he saw her. "You should eat something." "I'm not hungry." He raised an eyebrow. "You're a doctor, aren't you? Shouldn't you know better?" Her breath caught. "How do you know I'm a doctor?" He smirked. "I checked your bag. Dr. Amira Kalu, graduated top of her class. Moved here for a humanitarian program. Then something went wrong, didn't it?" She stiffened. "That's none of your business." He nodded slowly. "You're right, but now you're under my roof, and that makes it my business." "Why are you helping me?" she demanded. He looked straight at her. "Because sometimes saving someone else is easier than saving yourself." Those words silenced her. He stood up, grabbed his jacket and said, "You can stay as long as you want, but there are rules. You don't leave the property without my permission, and you don't lie to me." "And if I do?" He looked at her coldly. "Then you'll wish I hadn't stopped that car last night." He walked away, leaving her speechless. Amira stared at the piano keys he'd touched, wondering how a man like that could play something so beautiful. That night she sat by the window, unable to sleep. Every few minutes, black cars came and went, men whispering, phones ringing, doors slamming. The air smelled like danger. When the clock struck midnight, she heard footsteps outside her door. A knock followed. "Come in," she said softly. It was Vincenzo. He didn't enter. He just leaned against the doorframe. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Not in a place like this." He gave a faint smile. "You'll get used to it. Everyone does." She looked up at him. "Everyone? How many people have you saved from bridges?" He chuckled darkly. "You're the first." "Then why me?" He hesitated. For the first time, his confidence cracked. "Because you look like someone I once knew, someone I couldn't save." Before she could ask who, he turned and walked away. That night, as rain returned to the city, she whispered to herself, "What have I gotten myself into?" Downstairs, Vincenzo stood by the window, staring at the storm. One of his men approached him. "Boss, should we keep an eye on the girl?" Vincenzo didn't look away from the lightning. "No need. She's already broken. The world's done my job for me." He lit a cigarette, took a slow drag, and added quietly, "But maybe she's the one thing this house needs." The thunder rolled again, and both of them fell silent, neither realizing that the decision he made on that bridge would change both their lives forever. The next morning, Amira found herself in the mansion's grand kitchen, staring at a table full of food she hadn't asked for. Eggs, croissants, fruit, everything neatly arranged. One of Vincenzo's men stood by the door, watching her like she might run. "I can eat by myself," she said quietly. He shrugged. "Boss's orders? You don't go anywhere alone." She forced a small laugh. "Is this a hospital or a prison?" "Depends," he said. "You want to leave?" Her eyes drifted toward the open door leading to the garden. Guards everywhere. She shook her head. "I'll stay." When Vincenzo finally appeared, dressed in his usual dark suit, she stood. "You could have told your men to treat me like a human being." He poured himself coffee. "You were on a bridge last night trying to die. Forgive me for being cautious." She clenched her fists. "You don't get to use that against me." He looked up at her, calm as ever. "Then stop acting like a victim." The words hit her hard. "You think I want to be one?" "I think you've given up," he said, "and giving up is worse than dying." She stared at him, angry and hurt, then turned to leave. "Amira," he called. She stopped. "Eat something before you faint in my hallway." She didn't respond, but she sat down again, silently cutting her toast. He watched her for a long moment, then finally said, "I have work to do. Stay inside. My world isn't safe." "What kind of work?" he smirked. The kind you don't ask about." When he left, she exhaled, frustrated. There was something infuriating about him, how he could act like he owned the air itself. And yet, something in his eyes when he said, "My world isn't safe," felt more like a warning than a threat. Hours passed. The mansion was quiet except for distant voices and footsteps. Amira wandered into a small library filled with old books, dust, and half-finished whiskey glasses. On the piano by the window lay a framed photo, a man, a woman, and a little girl with brown curls and a bright smile. She picked it up gently. "Don't touch that," a voice said behind her. She jumped. It was Vincenzo. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." He took the frame from her hand, his expression unreadable. Her name was Isabella. "Your daughter?" she asked softly. He nodded once. "She's beautiful." He set the frame back down. "She died when she was 8. Amira's voice lowered its head. "I'm sorry." He gave a cold, bitter laugh. "Everyone says that. It doesn't change anything." She hesitated. "How did she—" "Leukemia," he interrupted. "The best doctors in Italy couldn't save her." Amira swallowed. "I'm a doctor, remember? I know what that kind of loss does." He glanced at her. "And what does it do, doctor? It breaks you. But it doesn't have to define you." He smiled faintly. "You sound like a therapist." She met his gaze. "Maybe you need one." For the first time, he laughed, a real laugh. "You've got guts." She smiled back, but only for a second. That night she heard shouting downstairs. A man's voice pleaded in Italian. Another voice, Vincenzo's, was calm, terrifyingly calm. Curiosity got the better of her. She crept halfway down the stairs and peeked around the corner. 2 men were kneeling on the marble floor, bruised and bleeding. Vincenzo stood before them, hands in his pockets. "You stole from me," he said in Italian. "Please, boss!" "It was a mistake," one cried. Vincenzo turned to one of his guards. "You know the rules." A gunshot echoed through the hall. Amira gasped and covered her mouth, stumbling backward. The guard looked up sharply. "Boss, someone's here." Vincenzo turned and saw her frozen on the stairs, trembling. Their eyes met. He sighed, frustrated. "Take them away." When he approached her, she stepped back. You killed him." He spoke calmly. "He killed one of my men first. That doesn't justify—" "It justifies everything," he snapped. "You don't understand how this world works." "I don't want to," she shouted. For a moment, silence filled the space between them. Then his voice softened. "Go back to your room." "I can't stay here anymore." "Yes, you can," he said firmly. "You're safer here than anywhere else." She wanted to argue, to run, but part of her knew he was right. The city outside didn't want her, not after what happened. She turned away, shaking. "You save lives and take them in the same breath. How do you sleep at night?" He paused. "I don't." She went upstairs without another word, her heart pounding. Later, she sat by her window, staring at the rain again. She couldn't stop thinking about the way his eyes had gone empty when he pulled that trigger, like killing didn't even register anymore. And yet, she also couldn't forget the way he looked at his daughter's photo. Somewhere deep down, she realized there was pain behind that cruelty. The next morning, Vincenzo found her in the garden, watering the roses. "Those were Isabella's favourite," he said quietly. She nodded. "I figured." "You're still here?" "You said I couldn't leave," she replied. He studied her. "You don't seem afraid anymore." "I am," she admitted. "But fear isn't always a reason to run." He looked at her differently this time, not as a broken stranger, but as someone who refused to stay broken. A phone buzzed in his pocket. He answered in Italian, his tone sharp. "Handle it. Now." When he hung up, his expression changed, colder, harder. "What is it?" she asked. "Business." "Business that involves guns again?" He gave a faint smirk. "You're learning." Before leaving, he said quietly, "Don't open the gates. Not for anyone." "Are you expecting trouble?" "In my world, trouble doesn't knock. It kicks down the door." When he was gone, she felt an ache she couldn't explain. Fear mixed with something else. Concern. Connection. Hours later, as dusk fell, she heard gunfire in the distance. The guards at the mansion tensed, radios buzzing. One of them yelled, "Boss is under attack!" Amira's heart stopped. Without thinking, she grabbed her medical kit and ran outside. By the time she reached the courtyard, cars were speeding in. 2 men helped Vincenzo out, his white shirt soaked in blood. "Get her!" one guard shouted. "The doctor!" She rushed forward. "What happened?" "Ambush," a guard growled. Vincenzo winced as she pressed on the wound. "I told you not to open the gates." "You told me to save lives," she said through tears. "Now shut up and let me do it." He laughed weakly. "Bossy, aren't you?" "Quiet," she hissed. That night, she worked for hours patching him up. When it was over, she sat beside him until he regained consciousness. When he opened his eyes, he whispered, "Why didn't you run?" "Because you saved me," she said. "And maybe I wanted to return the favour." He smiled faintly. You'll regret that. She shook her head. No, not this time. Outside, the storm raged again, but inside, something had shifted, and neither of them knew it yet. But this night, the night she chose to stay, would be the one that changed everything. Vincenzo stayed unconscious through the night. The doctors she called whispered nervously around him, terrified to even touch the infamous Moretti boss. But Amira's voice cut through their fear. "Do your job or get out," she snapped. And they obeyed. When he finally opened his eyes the next morning, she was asleep on the couch beside his bed, her head resting against the wall, dark circles under her eyes. He watched her for a long moment, the steady rise and fall of her breathing, before whispering, "You're terrible at following orders." Her eyes fluttered open. "And you're terrible at staying alive." He chuckled weakly. "Fair enough." "Don't move," she said quickly. "The bullet missed your lung by an inch. You're lucky." He groaned. "Luck doesn't visit me often." "Then maybe it finally decided to," he smiled faintly. "Or maybe it sent you." She turned away, pretending to check his IV line, but her cheeks flushed. "You should rest. Stay," he murmured. "I hate waking up alone." The words hung in the air, heavier than he intended. She didn't reply, but she didn't leave either. Days passed. His strength slowly returned, and so did his sarcasm. But Amira noticed something new: vulnerability. He still barked orders, still ruled with an iron tone, but every night he asked her to sit with him just for a few minutes. Sometimes they didn't talk at all. Just silence. Two broken people learning how to breathe again. One evening she caught him standing by the window, staring at the sunset. "I used to watch the sky with Isabella," he said quietly. "She'd say the clouds looked like angels." Amira smiled softly. She wasn't wrong. He looked at her. "Do you believe in angels, Doctor?" "I used to," she said, "until I realized no one was coming to save me." He stepped closer. "Maybe they did. They just sent the wrong kind of one." Her eyes met his, and for a brief moment the silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of something neither of them could name. But that peace didn't last. That night, while she checked his bandages, one of his men burst into the room. "Boss, we found the leak. The people who attacked us, they had inside help." Vincenzo's expression darkened. "Who?" The man hesitated. "Marco." Vincenzo's jaw clenched. "Bring him here." Minutes later, they dragged in a terrified young man. Amira froze as Vincenzo limped toward him, his eyes burning. "You tried to kill me." "Boss, I swear I—" Vincenzo struck him hard across the face. "You swore loyalty. Please, my family. They threatened." "Enough!" Vincenzo barked. He pulled a gun from his jacket, and Amira gasped. "Stop," she said, stepping forward. "You're injured. Let someone else." He didn't look at her. "Justice doesn't wait." She stood between them. "This isn't justice. This is another corpse on your conscience." He glared at her, furious, but she didn't move. "Get out of the way." No. The tension was electric. For the first time, someone had defied him and survived long enough to finish a sentence. After a long pause, he lowered the gun. "Get him out of my sight," he growled. When the guards dragged the man away, Vincenzo turned to her. "You're lucky I respect you." "You're lucky I'm not afraid of you," she shot back. He stared at her, then, unexpectedly, smiled. "You should be. I'm a doctor. I've seen death up close. You don't scare me anymore." He studied her for a moment, then said quietly, "You should, because the last person who looked at me that way ended up in the ground." She swallowed hard, but didn't look away. "Then maybe I'm the one who doesn't die easy." That night, neither of them slept. The next morning, she found him outside, feeding the doves by the fountain. "You keep birds?" she asked, surprised. "They remind me that freedom still exists," he said. "Even for men like me." She folded her arms. "You could choose freedom, you know," he smirked. "And do what? Open a bakery? You could try living." He turned to her, eyes sharp. "Living is a luxury for people without blood on their hands." Her voice softened. "You think you're the only one carrying guilt? I came here to help children, and one of them died in my arms because of a lie." He frowned. "A lie?" She nodded, tears forming. "The child didn't die because of me. The father worked for a man who wanted me out of the clinic, said I was taking his money. They made it look like my fault. My license was revoked and no one listened." Vincenzo's eyes narrowed. "What was his name?" "It doesn't matter anymore," she said. "It matters to me." She looked up at him. "Why?" "Because men like that don't deserve to breathe." She shook her head. "I don't want revenge. I just want peace." He looked away. Peace is a lie people tell themselves so they can keep surviving. Then maybe you've been lying too long. For once, he didn't have an answer. That evening, she brought him tea and found him staring at a letter on his desk. "What's that?" she asked. "An invitation," he said bitterly, "from the men who tried to kill me. They want to meet." "You're not going," she said immediately. "I have to," he replied. "In my world, refusing means war." She stepped closer. "Then take protection. Don't be reckless," he smiled faintly. "Since when do you care?" She sighed. "Since you started mattering." The words slipped out before she could stop them. He froze, watching her. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because feelings get people killed. I've already died once," she said softly. "Remember?" For a long moment, neither spoke. The rain outside began to fall again, slow and rhythmic, like the world itself was listening. Finally, he said, "You're too pure for this place. And you're too broken to see what you still have." He smiled sadly. "Maybe that's why we found each other." Later that night, as thunder rolled in the distance, Amira sat in her room, replaying his words in her mind. She didn't know what scared her more, his enemies outside or the feelings growing between them inside. Somewhere downstairs, Vincenzo watched her through the security cameras, his expression unreadable. "She's changing you," his second-in-command said quietly. Vincenzo didn't deny it. "Maybe. Or maybe she's reminding me what being human feels like." "You sure that's good for business?" He exhaled smoke slowly. "It's not good for business. But maybe it's good for me." And for the first time in years, the ruthless Moretti boss turned off the cameras and went to bed without locking his gun in reach. He didn't know why, but something about her made the darkness feel light. The night of the meeting arrived with the weight of a storm behind it. Clouds pressed low over the city, thunder murmuring like a warning. Vincenzo stood before a mirror, fastening his black suit jacket. The reflection staring back at him wasn't the ruthless Mafia boss the world feared. Not entirely. Something softer lingered in his eyes, something that hadn't been there before. Amira stepped into the room quietly. "You're still weak," she said. "You shouldn't be going anywhere." He turned, smiling faintly. "You're starting to sound like my conscience. Maybe that's because you finally have one." He chuckled. "Don't wait up for me, Doctor. I'm not letting you go alone." He raised an eyebrow. "This isn't your fight." "Maybe not, but you saved me from jumping off that bridge. If I hadn't met you, I'd be dead. Let me return the favor." He hesitated, the first real hesitation she'd ever seen from him, then finally nodded. "Stay close to me. Don't speak unless I say so." The drive was silent. The city lights blurred past, rain streaking across the windows. Amira's hands trembled in her lap. She wasn't sure if it was fear or adrenaline. Beside her, Vincenzo sat motionless, a statue of controlled danger. When they arrived at the abandoned dockyard, a group of armed men waited under the floodlights. The leader, a tall, grey-haired man with a scar running down his cheek, stepped forward. "Vincenzo Moretti," he said with a smirk. "I was beginning to think you'd lost your nerve." Vincenzo's voice was cold steel. "You tried to take what's mine. That was your first mistake." The man laughed. "And what's the second?" Vincenzo's eyes flicked briefly to Amira. "You came after her." Amira's heart stopped. "Me?" she whispered. The man's smirk widened. "Oh, you didn't tell her? She's the reason we tried to end you, Moretti. Her clinic, her past. She treated the wrong man. A traitor who worked for me. When she exposed him, she cost me millions. So I made sure her life burned to ashes." Vincenzo's expression darkened. "You destroyed her life because of business?" "Business," the man said simply. "And now she's standing next to the devil himself. Fitting, don't you think?" Amira's eyes filled with tears. "It was you all along." Vincenzo's voice dropped low. "Dangerous. You ruined her once. You won't get the chance again." Gunfire erupted before she could blink. Vincenzo pushed her behind a crate, firing back with deadly precision. The sound was deafening, bullets shouting, the smell of gunpowder thick in the rain-soaked air. "Stay down," he yelled, but she didn't listen. She saw one of the attackers sneaking up from the side, gun raised. Without thinking, she grabbed a fallen pistol and fired. The man dropped instantly. Her hands shook violently, but she'd saved his life. When the smoke cleared, only Vincenzo and his men stood. The grey-haired man was on his knees, bleeding, beaten. Vincenzo walked up to him slowly, rain dripping off his coat. You took everything from her, he said. The man spat blood. And you took everything from me. Call it even. Vincenzo aimed his gun. His finger hovered over the trigger. Don't, Amira said softly behind him. He froze. He's not worth it, she continued. You said justice doesn't wait, but vengeance never ends. Don't let him drag you back into that hole. Vincenzo looked at her, the woman he'd saved from death, who somehow had saved him right back. His hand trembled. Then, with a deep breath, he lowered the gun. You're lucky she was here, he said quietly to the man, because if she wasn't, this conversation would be over. He turned and walked away, leaving the man sobbing in the mud. As they reached the car, Amira's legs gave out. He caught her instantly, holding her close. She was shaking, tears mixing with rain. I killed someone, she whispered. I didn't mean to. He cupped her face gently. You saved me. Don't ever apologize for surviving. She looked up at him, eyes full of pain. You're supposed to be the monster, so why do you sound like the only one with a soul? He smiled faintly. Maybe I borrowed yours. They drove back in silence again, but this time it was a peaceful silence, the kind that comes after a storm. Back at the mansion, Vincenzo collapsed onto the couch, exhausted. Amira knelt in front of him, cleaning a cut on his cheek. You didn't have to come, he said quietly. Yes, I did. He studied her face, then whispered, You could still leave. Go back to your country. Start over. She shook her head. Start over where? The world thinks I'm a fraud. Here at least I can be useful to you. He exhaled. You deserve better than me. Maybe, she said softly, but I choose you. He looked away, struggling to hide the emotion in his eyes. You're going to regret that. Then I'll regret it with my eyes open. Weeks passed. Vincenzo's enemies fell silent. Some disappeared, others simply stopped fighting. Rumours spread through the underworld that the boss had changed. He wasn't less ruthless, but his rage had purpose now. Amira's clinic reopened, this time fully funded and protected. She treated the poor for free and no one dared to stop her. One afternoon, while she bandaged a child's arm, Vincenzo walked in quietly. The children froze, recognizing the man from whispered stories. It's okay, Amira said gently. He's a friend. Vincenzo smiled awkwardly. I brought something. He handed her an envelope. Inside was her reinstatement letter, her medical license, officially cleared. She gasped. How? I made a few calls, he said. Use some favors. Don't ask questions. Her eyes filled with tears. You didn't have to do this. He smiled faintly. You saved my life twice. Consider us even. She laughed softly through her tears. We'll never be even. He turned to leave, but she caught his hand. Vincenzo, he looked back. You said once that peace was a lie, she said. But I think we just found it. For a moment the world stood still. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You were the only thing in my life that wasn't built on violence. And you were the only thing that reminded me I was still alive. He leaned down, kissed her forehead gently, then whispered, Don't ever stop being that light. As he walked away into the fading sunlight, Amira watched him go, the ruthless Mafia boss who had once saved her from the edge, only to find salvation himself. And somewhere deep inside, both of them knew their story wasn't over. It had only just begun. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this, where even the darkest souls can find light. They say some souls meet in the middle of their breaking point. She was ready to end her story. He was trapped inside his own darkness, but somehow saving her saved him too. The ruthless Mafia boss found something money could never buy, peace. And the doctor who lost everything found a reason to live again. Maybe redemption isn't about changing the world. Maybe it's about finding one person who refuses to give up on you. If this story touched you, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell us in the comments, did he save her or did she save him? Because sometimes the most dangerous man in the world just needs someone to remind him he's still human. Thank you for watching. More stories like this every week.